Khan. How's everyone doing? Everyone's well? How was the Eid celebration last week? Sorry, I became ill. I actually had a procedure 2 days after, and so I was unable to join. Bismillah, wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. First things first, I just want to remind, or I just mention to everyone that, so next week we're going to take a week off. Just people will be traveling for the long break, long weekend. And the week after that, we're going to start at 12 o'clock from now. We're not going to start at 12:30. That way we can play. So we'll start at 12 to 12:30, 12 to 12:40 we'll do football, ultimate frisbee, basketball. Those of you who are online virtually, you can virtually join us for that. I don't know how else to help you there. But I want there to be a sports element in it. The sports element, what it does is it allows us to spend time together outside of just sitting and listening to a talk, which can be extremely boring at times. So inshallah, next week, no class. The week after, we're going to start, and we're going to start a little earlier, around 12 o'clock. And the goal is to be able to have some time physically with one another outside, ultimate frisbee, whatever, football, on the black topics, etc. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I actually mentioned the first and second thing, that no class next week and the time change. Okay, now let's begin because I have a lot to catch up on with you guys because I didn't get a chance to meet you all next week. So we left off, not last week, but the week before, on a very critical part in Malcolm X's life. And this is this interaction he has with this young woman named Laura. Now again, it's not her real name, number one. And number two, there's going to be some mature content over here that, let's just be honest, you're going to deal with. You deal with it in junior high, you deal with it in high school, you deal with it in Islamic schools and in public schools and in private schools. So for me to pretend like, oh, this doesn't happen, and for us to be overly sanitized about this is not going to help anyone. It's much better that we're just real about this. So Malcolm is working in the what's that called? The drugstore. Drugstore meaning like a corner, like pharmacy type thing. But they would have, like, you know, the drugstores of the past, they would have a lot of things available there, and they would even have, you can get ice cream there, etc. And so this young woman would come daily. Malcolm was very innocent. He just thought she liked the ice cream and the shakes over there. No, she was actually interested in Malcolm X. Now this brings up the first question about interest. Interest, not financial interest, like interest in the opposite gender. Why are we talking about this in a masjid setting? Well, the reality is, unless you're living in some sort of alcove or cave or somewhere else where you're sort of separated from the entire world, having an attraction, interest in someone is going to be a natural stage in life. Who's the youngest amongst you? How old are you? 13. So by your age, so you're in 7th grade? You would be in 7th grade? Okay, so you would be in 7th. How old are you? Behind you? Yeah. 15? Okay. I saw you point to him, so I wasn't sure. Okay. So what are you, you're in 9th grade? 10th grade? 9th grade, okay. Anyone before 7th grade here? So by 7th grade, you're going to have dating, you're going to have interaction. You're going to even have this within Muslims as well. I worked in Islamic schools since 2002. I still work in Islamic schools. We're not safe from it. It might not be as common, but we're not safe from it. So as we get into this discussion, we have to have this conversation, ask ourselves, is this permissible to have attraction and feelings? And the question is absolutely, what? Yes, no, maybe so. What's the answer? Yes, it is. It's a natural thing. It is absolutely permissible to have feelings and attraction. Anyone who thinks otherwise is actually going against not only prophetic sentiment, and what do I mean by that, I'll tell you shortly, but also just against what it means to be a human being. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us certain ways. You're a 5-year-old, you're not going to have these feelings. You're going to have attraction and want towards other things. Food, candy, friends, hanging out with cousins, sleepovers, movies, etc. Get a little older, the attraction changes. Now you're seeing people with certain type of clothing and shoes, you want those shoes. Get a little older, the attraction changes. What do you want? Maybe you want people to notice you in school. Get a little older, the attraction changes. Now you want a phone. All these things are constantly part of the human reality. So none of you should feel like, oh my God, I'm a bad Muslim because I want something. Look at my kids. I have a 6, 5, and 3-year-old there. The 14 and 12-year-old are somewhere else. They all want something. The youngest one, the 3-year-old guy in the car, he's like, oh, where's my truck? He wanted his truck. What shirt is he wearing? He's wearing a truck shirt. Everyone has something. That's the natural reality. And if you try to fight against something that's natural, it's only going to become worse. We don't try to fight against it. What we try to do is try to understand the Islamic parameters around it. The Islamic parameters that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established is what we understand. I'll give an example. Is it permissible to eat? Absolutely. Is it permissible to eat whatever you want? Well, now that depends on what you want, right? If you want, a Big Bird from chai tea, is that permissible to have? Yes. If you want, an alcoholic beverage, is that permissible to have? Absolutely not. Ham sandwich, no. Halal turkey sandwich, yes. What's up? You know where that is? Go.
Yeah, can I do it?
Yeah, go. So all of these things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what He does, He establishes parameters, and in the parameters are where we operate. If we stay within the parameters, we're absolutely fine. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Kulu, washrabu, eat, drink, wala tusrifu, but don't become excessive. He tells Adam alayhi salam within paradise, he tells him and his wife that to eat, to enjoy whatever paradise offers, وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجْرَةِ. But you have one parameter. Don't come close to this tree. So there are parameters that are set, and parameters will always be in existence until the hereafter. Once you enter into paradise, there's no more worry. Then is وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي. Whatever you want, you'll get. People say, well, why can't I get that over here? Because that's the nature of dunya. In dunya, we can't get it. In dunya, let's just look at halal things. Is it halal to board an airplane and fly? Yeah. Is it halal to fly by yourself? Is it halal to jump off a building and fly? If you're able? Yes, it's permissible. Can we do it? No, we can't. It's outside of our construct. Allah in paradise can let you fly. We know Jafar al-Tayyar, Ja'far radiallahu anhu, the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he will be in paradise. He was seen in paradise with wings. He will fly. And inshallah, we'll fly in paradise as well. In this world, what's up? The nature of this world is that there are parameters. So now coming to this incident where he starts to gain interest in Laura, it is permissible to have feelings. Absolutely permissible. It's permissible to find someone attractive. Absolutely permissible. What is impermissible? Depending on how a person acts. That's very, very clear. In our deen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not stop us from feeling things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, can you put your mask back on? Thank you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He stops us from doing that which is permissible. There's a difference between the two. So what is the level of permissibility when interacting with the opposite gender? It's really important to understand this. Because the next 3 or 4 chapters, we're going to see Malcom interacting with the opposite gender. What is permissible? What is impermissible? How many of you go to public school over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, you go to public school here. Any of you have a female teacher? So do you tell your teacher, Astaghfirullah, you're a female, I'm a male, we're not married, we're not related, I can't come to your class? Who's done that recently? I'm sure all of us want to, that way you get out of math class easily, but you can't do that. Any of you ever paired with people in groups? Are those always the same gender? No. No, it doesn't happen that way. I'm an Islamic school teacher in my class that aren't always paired with the same gender. It doesn't always work that way. So what do? Do you just all of a sudden, Astaghfirullah, I can't communicate with you, and now you're cutting out all avenues of any type of communication? No, you, without my mentioning anything, you've already understood the parameters of what is permissible. Are you going to be like, what up, girl, give her a hug? No, you're not going to do that. You're going to turn around and stand backwards and say, I can't listen to your voice? Not going to do that either. Allah Ta'ala sets parameters. Now, Malcom's understanding of parameters with the opposite gender now, versus when he comes into the Nation of Islam, and there's a whole chapter where, before he gets married to Betty Shabazz, of how even the Nation of Islam, the way they honor women, it's noticed. And then after he becomes a Sunni Muslim. Now, the end of this chapter, Malcom has a huge regret. Now, I want to share that regret with you, and then we're going to move backwards. And what's this regret? He says, I'm in the wrong chapter. Here we go. He says that Laura never came against the drugstore as long as I continued to work there. I'll mention why later. The next time I saw her, she was a wreck of a woman, notorious around Black Roxbury, in and out of jail. She had finished high school, but by then she was going the wrong way. Go further, go further, go further. One of the shames I've carried for years is that I blame myself for all of this. He ruined her. And when we sometimes talk about dating and interacting with the opposite gender, sometimes we talk about it only from the perspective of what's halal and haram, but thinking from a social perspective, just for one moment, just from a social perspective. Put Islam aside. Of course, we're not going to separate ourselves from deen, but just put the deeni ruling aside for a moment. And look at what happens. Look at what he said over here. Any of you have friends from public school who go out on dates? None of you? Too young? Yeah, you guys do, right? The first couple I remember was when I was in second grade. Serious. Kevin and Tiffany. I still remember very clearly. Still remember very, very clearly. People start young. So, let's look at it from a social perspective. Those of you in public school, those of you who are in madrasa or Islamic school, you might not know this, but you might have been exposed to this from other capacities as well. What's up? Take her. Okay. Why don't you guys leave before we leave the house? Hamna, remember, just clean the seat, wash your hands, flush the toilet. Okay, got it. Okay. He used it before we left. That I made sure of. What was I talking about? Okay. So, now, couple is dating. Couple is very, very much in love, right? Whatever. Right? That's how like all 8th graders are. They all think they found the one. Completely attracted to one another and attached with one another. What's one harm that comes from this? Don't talk about deen. Don't tell me it's haram, they're going to hell. Tell me from a social perspective. Yes? Sorry? Heartbreak. Absolutely. In heartbreak, my wife's a therapist by profession. Heartbreak is a real thing. Yes? They went to the bathroom, but you can't go there. You have to wait here. Wait here. Don't go to the bathroom, okay? Stay here. Heartbreak is a real thing. Now, what's the result of heartbreak? One of my friends, Mauna Omar, Anas, sit down here, okay? He is a physician by profession. He's also a scholar. He mentioned something really interesting. He had a 15-year-old who came in with elevated levels, enzyme levels, that indicated that she had a heart attack. He couldn't figure out why a 15-year-old with no history of heart disease, no heart health problems, has enzymes within her that indicates that she had some sort of minor heart attack. So they began to do a case study of her, a history of her. And what did they find? They found that she was in a relationship. And they broke up. The breakup was messy. And it actually caused the physical manifestation that it seemed that she had signs of heart attack. That's physical. Let's look at psychological. Has anyone ever seen someone break up? Are they all smiles and happy? Oh, tell me about it. I know it's not your own personal experience, so don't worry about it, but tell me, what are some of the signs? What happens? They cry. They're upset. They feel the world is collapsing on them. Some of them turn to suicidal tendencies. Some begin to cut themselves. Now, from a socio-psychological perspective, is that a positive thing? No, it's not. Let's take another step aside. Let's look at it from marriage perspective. Again, not Islamic, look at it socially for a moment. In marriage, do couples fight? Yes, they do. The Prophet ﷺ and the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen got into disagreements. It's natural, it will happen. Now, the extent of it should not be extreme. But there will be disagreements. That's going to happen. Now, when the disagreements kick in, who is there really egging you on and cheering you on? He's in the background. He's on the bleachers. Who is it? Shaitan. In fact, in the narration of the Prophet ﷺ, we see that from those individuals, when Shaitan has this gathering, he begins to, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And this young Shaitan comes and says, I caused a husband-wife to split apart. And you come over here, and he gives him an embrace, and you're close to me. He loves this act. Now, when a husband and wife begin to fight, as a husband, I will tell you that shaitan whispers a lot in your mind. For some people, he'll whisper divorce. For some people, he'll whisper, why did I get into this? For some people, he'll whisper, she's not worth it, etc. Or the wives feel the same way, etc. Right? Now, if a person has a history of previous relationships, what does shaitan begin to do? He begins to establish what? Go back, the comparison game. What is this comparison game? Husband gets upset. Wife's like, I was just joking. Why he gets so upset? And then she thinks, man, so-and-so in high school, he always got my jokes. This guy never gets my jokes. Husband and wife get into a disagreement. Wife gets upset. Husband's like, why is she getting upset? I can't provide her the vacation she wants, or whatever the case may be. I remember so-and-so in college, even though I was working an hourly wage job, I didn't make much, she was happy if I just gave her a candy bar. This woman's not happy. And they begin to compare. And the comparisons go physical. Then they begin to think, look at her and her hair. So-and-so had nice hair. Look at him and his stomach. So-and-so had six-pack ab. Whatever, the comparison game comes up. When those comparisons come up, yes, when things settle down, they begin to push away. But now they're somewhere in this cranial capacity. They're sitting somewhere, so shaitan can access them again in the future in an easier method, an easier way. It's destructive to have those sources of comparison. There's a scholar who's overseas, who's actually an American scholar who lives overseas, a convert. And he mentioned something interesting. He said, I find that my wife is the most beautiful person I know. But then he said one thing. It could be because she is the most beautiful person, or it also could be in where I live, the women, we don't see their faces. So she's the only face I see, and he doesn't have a television, etc. So this comparison game, socially speaking, is really damaging. I tell a lot of Muslims, just put aside who date, just put aside the halal haram for a moment. You're going to be 10 years later, finally married, 15 years later married, and you're going to begin to compare. That comparison is going to destroy you because a person, shaitan, he makes us always think, if only I got that job. If only the Bulls finally made the playoffs. If only this, if only that. And if is the word of shaitan. That's how he manipulates us by thinking, man, if only that happened. And so it's our responsibility to cut out those ifs before they happen. To cut out those ifs before they happen. And one of the ways we see in this lesson, Malcom early on, he has a lot of regret. Now the next point, socially speaking. Everyone is influenced. You're all influenced. I mentioned this 2 weeks ago. No one's original, everyone's unique. I'm not original. My beard style is not original. My kufi selection is not original. The socks I normally wear, I'm not wearing socks right now, that's not original. I didn't make them myself. My mask is not original. It's my work mask. Nothing's original about me. It's unique, different components, but everyone influences everyone. What happens when people get together and one person wrongs the other or abuses the other? Well, that's exactly when I look at what happens right now. And you see sometimes the far-reaching effects that happens. So Malcom, and again, her name really is not Laura. What's up?
I'm doing this with my job, but I don't really do that.
Hamna, she can do what she wants with her doll. You do what you want with your doll, okay? No throwing to the ceiling.
But I'm doing this.
Okay, but don't throw it to the ceiling, okay? This fan's on. No throwing to the ceiling, okay? You can do this. No, you can't throw it to the ceiling, okay?
But I was doing this.
Okay, but you can't throw it to the ceiling.
Papa?
Khadija, now you're upsetting me.
No, what is that?
That is a screen. Go. Yeah. Okay, bismillah. So what was I saying? Okay, so now what happens? So he meets this girl. And they initially, just talk. They're hanging out. Laura's an honor student. She's a year ahead in mathematics. She comes one day to Malcolm's sister's home in Roxbury. And Malcolm's sister is elated. She's so happy. Because this is the type of girl she wanted Malcom to be with. Someone good, someone of good influence. She's an honor student, advanced in math, has a clear college route ahead of her. is going to be someone who's going to be successful, wants to benefit humanity, lives with her grandmother, very morally upright woman. So what does Malcolm's sister hope? That if she can be with Malcolm, she'll rub off on Malcolm. She'll rub off on Malcolm. Now, what do we notice in life? When you have two types of influences, good and bad, not always, but who usually comes out on top? Bad often comes out on top. Not always. Malcolm is innocent himself. He's not innocent, he's not who he becomes later, about 6-7 years down the line. You know what you've shown me? That I can't bring you here anymore.
I want to hold you.
I know, but that's for before and after, okay? Thank you. So Malcolm, what he does is he takes her out, they have ice cream together, etc. Then he's like, hey, you want to go dancing? They used to do something called Lindy hopping, which is like old school, I'm not going to get into it, type of dancing that they used to do in like these in these night settings, etc. She said, okay. So they go. You can't be over here, you have to be over there, okay? Yes. So Malcolm, they go. Laura is this timid, shy girl. And now she's around people who are not really her cup of tea. And Malcolm, okay, I'm gonna call Mama.
Look, can we want my pie?
I need you guys not to keep coming here, okay? Because look, Khadija, look, he's doing everything you're doing. Every time you come, he's coming now. Oh, into the back, please.
Okay.
Anas, I have to call Mama now, okay?
Where's the garbage in the dump?
Anas, 3, 2, 1. Trying to be stern, but I can't help but crack a smile every time they come. Okay, so, coming back. She's not in her element. They start dancing. And what would happen is that the way it would work is that when they would dance, the best dancers would be sort of spotlit. Everyone would begin to pay attention to them. And everyone would begin to sort of surround them. And everyone would begin to encourage them. And here is this innocent high school girl, no, Anas, no, and Malcolm, and they're stealing the show. And as they're stealing the show, no, Anas. As they're stealing the show completely, what begins to happen is Malcolm now, Laura loves this. And when they were leaving, actually, Malcolm, very interesting, Laura didn't want to tell his, Khadija, come over here. Khadija, come over here. Come over here. I have to have you sit in timeout now, okay? You have a 1-minute timeout. Thank you. After that 1 minute, I don't want to see you come over here, right here. Good job. Just sit here, right here. Thank you. No, not near me. To move back. Thank you, right there. Perfect. Good job. And she has to leave. And when she has to leave, what happens? She can't tell her grandmother where she's going. So Malcolm encourages her to lie to her grandmother. She's never lied before to her grandmother. She's never done it before. And now she does it. And the first time it's really hard. She's stuttering, she's stammering, but she gets away with it, and they go. Everyone loves how amazing these two are together. Like, we had to go back. So they go back again. When they go back again, they steal the show. Everyone is totally enamored with them. And now this is where the heartbreak and everything begins to occur. They hoist up Malcolm on their shoulders because they're dancing so well. The women hoist up Laura on their shoulders. And as Malcolm is hoisted up, he sees another woman. You can go back now, okay? He sees another woman. The group over here, what ethnicity, what race are they? They're all what? They're all black. He sees a white woman. The white woman, Malcolm said, that was a symbol of status. And he calls her Sophie, that's not her real name. That was a symbol of status. If you're a black man with a white woman, you really made it. Now, one of the things we noticed 2 weeks ago is they hated the way they were treated by white people. But everything they did, they were trying to become more what? White. They dressed as if they were white. Some spoke as if they were white. Some used cream on their skin to make themselves look more white, Some conked their hair to make it look straight like people who are white. Even though they hated the way they were treated, they often gravitated to that way because a lot of the oppressed, they gravitate towards the oppressor. So he notices her. Laura sees this. He then tells Laura that I'm going to drop you off at home. And this moment of just spectacular happiness is shattered for Laura. He drops her off at home, and he goes and spends the evening at the dance with Sophie, and then doesn't speak to Laura again. Laura, what happens to her now? Now we see exactly what happens to her. He mentions that after this, she eventually graduated high school, dropped all of her honors classes. She began to defy her grandmother. She was going out late. She was drinking liquor. This led to dope. This led to her selling herself to men. Then what else did she do? She began to go down the wrong path. She became notorious around Roxbury. She was in and out of prisons. To have treated her as I did for a white woman made the blow doubly heavy. The only excuse I can offer is that, like so many of my black brothers today, I was just deaf, dumb, and blind. Malcolm ruined this girl's life, and he lived with that till the day he died. He had no contact with her ever again. Now, did people know about Malcolm in America? Yes. Did they know about him across America? Yes. Outside of America? Yes. He was globally known. Do you think if Laura was still alive, and they don't know if she died of like a heroin overdose, or we don't know anything about her, if she was still alive and she saw Malcolm, do you think she would have ever attended any of his speeches? What do you think? Probably not. She probably thought this is the biggest hypocrite around. So his interaction there destroyed her completely, all for what? Being someone who can gain the status symbol. So now let's bring it back to all of us today, and let's look at the lessons. Lesson number 1. Guys, you're going to be tempted. It's going to happen in life. And it's not impermissible to have feelings or wants or desires. But the parameters that Allah draws around all of this is not just for deen. It's for your own well-being. I can say this at the age of 40 while you guys sit in your teens, that I understand now in hindsight the benefit of it. Will it be easy? No, it's not going to be easy, especially in your time when everything's available at your fingertips. It's not going to be easy. But that's when it requires good brotherhood, companionship, mentors, etc. to talk this out with. Because people will say, well, you know what, I'm going to marry her later. It doesn't make it halal all of a sudden. And a small percentage actually marry that person later. That's number 1. Number 2, to treat someone in a certain way, not realizing that it could alter that person forever, ruins that person's life, but also ruins our life. There are incidents I think of in my life, man, I treated that person incorrectly. Even right now when I'm a bit stern with my kids, like I feel bad. Like later I make it up. Like we actually leave here when you guys pray and we just go to Dar al-Islam because there's a little more room for them to run around there. And we pray, then I take them out for something afterwards. So I feel bad, like telling them, hey, don't come by, etc. Because the way you treat someone can forever alter them. Forever alter them. And you don't know. You don't know one word can alter someone such that it makes them hate you. Now you're a representative of deen, so they begin to hate deen forever. So be very careful how you treat people and what you say to people. Third thing, never try to be a sellout. Meaning, what does that mean? Make yourself into someone else for betterment, because in the end, you're better the way you were. If I try to sell out my deen, my culture, my ethnicity, etc., who I am, for the sake of someone else, you think they care about me? No, they're going to drop me like a bad habit in a few days when they find someone else. But everyone who I destroyed along the way, including myself, may not be able to be preserved later. That's the third thing. And the fourth thing is, remember, just because there's good in you and there's bad in someone else doesn't mean that you're always going to be strong enough to change that person. There was good in Laura, but Malcolm had some bad traits. And Malcolm's sister thought, oh, she'll change him. He completely changed her. So be careful about your company. I'm not saying drop your friends. What I am saying is be careful how much time you give to those who are not as good. Give them some time. But as some of the scholars mentioned, Umar radiallahu anhu, he would spend time with those people who are not as good until he felt their influence, and he would step away. And he would be with people who are better to improve himself, then he would go back. Because you cannot drive a car in fumes. And spiritually speaking, when you're around with people who have negative effects on us, we can't help them until we begin to better ourselves. So stop over here. We're going to start the chapter of Harlemite next week. Not next week. Next week you guys have off because we're going to, some of you will be traveling, inshallah. The week after we're going to meet. The week after we're going to start earlier. We start at noon. We'll be outside. So come, all of you, mashallah, all wear thobes, excellent. But come geared to play, okay? Just have your shoes on and if you wear a thobe, like wear clothes underneath that you can play with. Then we'll end around 12:30, 12:35. Give you about 5 minutes to wash up. Please wear deodorant. Please, you don't stink the masjid up either. Come in, then we're gonna have from like 12:40 to 1:15 the normal talk, and then we'll stay for prayer. Cool. As it is with every week, I'm gonna step out now. I'll be back here or at DS for Dhuhr. You just have to take them away so they don't cause problems for anyone else. Amna Khadija Anas.